Hey, Lashpreneurs, happy Monday to you. This is the episode I should have done a long time ago. We are going to talk about the differences between a 1099 independent contractor and a W-2 employee. Hold on, because this is going to be a good episode. This conversation I have privately in DMs and on calls and with students all the time. It is a big undertaking to try and explain this over a podcast. So we're going to get into it. And this may be even a two-part episode because it is lengthy. It is, so for those of you that are outside of the US, this probably won't apply to you. These are federal laws for the United States. So those of you that are in the United States, when I say federal law, I mean that is a countrywide law, not state specific. Your state may have more nuances that may be stricter than the federal government, but they won't be less strict. The federal government's laws reign supreme. So states can be more restrictive, more like California is very, 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 very restrictive when it comes to independent contractors versus W-2s, but they cannot be less restrictive. So federal law rules all of the state's laws. So when we're talking about this, you may say something like, well, my state is different. It's federal law, right? That can't be argued. Now, all of that to say that just as a disclaimer for this episode, I am not an attorney and I am not an accountant, and no information provided in this episode or in the following blogs or any other content should be construed as legal or accounting advice. Please seek a licensed professional in your area to validate your concerns or your questions. This is for educational, informational purposes only. Now that we got that out of the way, I highly can't recommend enough. If you want to hire a team that, hey, you pay attention here, that just because you want to hire a team and because it's done so wrong and so illegally in our industry doesn't mean that it can't be done legally and profitably. In fact, that's what we teach to. We teach how to hire team members legally and profitably so you can have a long-term sustainable business. I'm going to be referencing a lot from this book. It's called The Salon Ownership and Management, The Definitive Guide to the Professional Beauty Business by Tina Alberino. We'll link it up in the show notes. She also has a stellar blog. She has done I've been following her for years. She's done a stellar job in translating law regulations to the beauty business, to the beauty industry. So highly recommend doing a deep dive on her and getting this book. It is a beefy book. So it's about, 700 pages. And I'm specifically going to be talking through the 20-factor IRS test for determining worker classification and just kind of summarizing what she's gotten there. But I highly recommend, and again, we'll link it up in the show notes for you to go get this book to start to understand and have a resource guide for the legalities around hiring, and also being able to talk to an employment attorney. Your accountant may suggest doing 1099s. My accountant did, but they don't fully understand the legalities required of that. They just understand the accounting side of it, which yes, it can be less expensive, quote unquote, to hire independent contractors because you're not responsible for minimum wages. You're not responsible for sick pay, for federally mandated employment rights, payroll taxes, all that kind of stuff. From an accounting standpoint, sure, it probably makes more sense to do independent contractor, but from a legal standpoint, it is very rare that it can be done legally in our industry. I don't want to say it can't, but really, I want you to get it in your head that it's just not an option for you to have 1099s. The only way that 1099s really work, and I hate to even call them 1099s, is when you have booth renters or room renters and you have zero control over how they run their business. They're completely independent. They just pay you rent. And that's the only relationship that you have with them as far as like the legal and the structure of the business. So all of that being said, are we ready to dive in? I have a feeling some of you, I'm going to put a little ruh-roh into your brain after this. All right, so there are 20 factors. We're not going to go over all 20 today. I want to just kind of hone in on the ones that for our industry really make the biggest difference and where most people end up failing a 20-factor test. So how does this end up happening where the IRS gets involved in your employment structure? I've seen it done many different ways, but the way that I see that usually generally leads to a lot of fines, fees, and lawsuits is when a former employee or a former independent contractor either gets wind of the fact that there is legal classifications that weren't followed, or they try to file unemployment If they file unemployment and they put you down as an employer, yet they were a 1099, there is no record of them being an employee there. And this often is how the labor board of your state ends up getting notified that something's a little fishy. Governments, state governments are very aware of how illegally misclassified, our industry runs things. And so that's a quick money grab for them. Again, how I've seen this just based on the people that I've known that have pursued lawsuits against salons and salons that have been sued for this. Generally, what can happen is that the state board or the IRS gets kind of flagged that you're not classifying people legally, and they come pay a visit. And then they start to snoop and they start to get into your financials and your documents and your records. And what that ends up doing is if they do find that your team is misclassified, not only will there be penalties and fees associated with that misclassification, chances are you will have to owe back pay for minimum wage that wasn't provided, which can get very pricey. And then there's also, there'll be fees associated or penalties for how long it takes you to get caught up on paying those back wages. And so it just becomes a snowball effect. I just saw, I think it was last month, that a nail salon in California was fined $1.2 million for misclassification of their employees. So to be taken seriously. And just because you don't know the laws don't mean that they don't apply to you. The government doesn't really care that you're naive to know what the federal laws are. It's your responsibility as an employer to make sure that you're understanding and compliant with the laws that protect both the salon and the employees. So let's dive in. I got so much more I can say on this, but we'll try to be concise with this episode. So first and foremost, one of the factors, we'll start with the first one, is instructions. And so a worker, we'll call the worker, that's the independent contractor, right? When we're talking about a client in the terms of the IRS, that's actually you as the owner. You are the client of the independent contractor. The independent contractor is self-employed. And I'm using quotes because it's not that there's nuance to someone being self-employed. They're either employed or self-employed. I say that because in our industry, we're like, oh, sure, they're independent contractors, when really they're treated as employees. And that's what can get you flagged should the IRS run how you manage and how you run this team. So that's why I use quotes when it comes to self-employed. Not, if you're listening, you're not seeing me doing quotes, but I am doing quotes. All right, so if a worker who is required to comply with you're the salon owner's instructions about when, where, and how he or she is to work as an employee. So if you have any control over when they do their job, they have scheduled shifts, where they do their job, they can only do it in your salon, and how they do their job, they have to greet the client, they have to apply these lashes, they have to provide waxing services. If the owner requires compliance of the worker, there is an element of control over the role, therefore it is indicative of an employee-employer relationship. So most of y'all, you're caught already, right? Like, you have control over how, when, and where they do their job. They are not actually an independent contractor, they are an employee. Okay. Number two is training. If they are required to attend meetings, do continuing education, be trained how to do their job, then that is an element of control. Independent contractors are only responsible for delivering a result, not how the result is delivered. So if you have any influence over the result that the independent contractor delivers to a client, they are not actually an independent contractor. They are more of an employee-employer relationship. Number three, integration. Basically, what this means is if they provide beauty services and you provide beauty service as the main business, you're not actually independent. You are dependent on each other. So if you own a beauty salon, and the IRS is way more general than specific. So even if it's like, well, really we're a hair salon, but they provide lash services, they're beauty services in general. And so that's really how the IRS looks at it, is more of the broad general. A beauty service salon is hiring an independent contractor that also provides beauty services. This is where we have a 3-factor test that most beauty salons fail on. It's an ABC test. It's a 1, 2, 3 test. The control, the nature of the work, and the independent of trade. So what that means is who has control over the result and the work done. If it's the independent contractor, great, they're independent. If you have any influence over how that job is done, you have control. The nature of the work. So again, is it beauty services provided for a beauty service-based business? A true independent contractor would be like you hiring a plumber to come in and replace the toilets. It's a one-time job. You have no control over how they do it. You don't care how they do it. Just as long as the toilet gets fixed, you're good to go, right? Somebody who is doing lash services for a lash salon or hair services for a hair salon, the nature of the work is the same. And then independent trade. So I want to make sure I'm stating this pretty darn clearly. When we're talking about independent trade, it means that they really can do their job anywhere, anytime, any place. If a job would normally be performed by an employee, then they should be classified as such. So if your expectation is that they're going to show up for their shift, that they are not going to work at other businesses, that they are going to provide services for the business's clientele, not their clientele. If they're self-employed, any client they see is ownership of their business, not yours. So they can take their clients wherever they want, however they want. And as long as you're getting paid rent, you should be okay with it. And most of you are not okay if you're a quote unquote team member. And even the fact that you call them a team member is an element of control over their role. You probably wouldn't be okay with them taking the clients that you paid to market or you spent time marketing to get into the business for them to take that client at any other location that is licensed for them to be able to provide those services. And for those of you that are in states where it's not regulated that they do it in a salon, they can do it at home, right? They can do it mobily. They can take their clients and perform their services wherever, and that should not impact how your business is run. Most of you, that's the problem, right? You've got clients in the door. You are saying that they are the business's clients, not the contractor's clients. And so if the contractor leaves, the clients stay. Well, that's not actually an employee or an independent contractor relationship. Same thing with number 4, services rendered personally. If the services must be rendered personally by the contractor, presumably the person or persons for whom the services are performed are interested in the methods used to accomplish it, blah, 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 blah. What basically it means is like, think about it from a independent contractor who's a makeup artist. If a makeup artist is hired to go do a bride and her bridal party on Saturday, and that makeup artist gets sick, she as the independent contractor can contact any other makeup artist to go fulfill on that job because she is personally unable to. So think about it in your business. We'll just keep using lashes, but if your lash artist gets sick, can she call one of her friends who has her own business down the street to come in and fill in for her to perform the services that she had contracted for that day or the clients that she has scheduled for that day? Most of y'all would not be okay with that, right? It's like, I don't know this person. I don't have the contract with this person. The contractor is subcontracting out the work to be done because she's unable to fulfill on that services, but she still wants the contract to go through and the payments from the clients to still go through. Again, if she cannot do that, then she's actually more of an employee-employer. And if she has to go through you to have her clients rescheduled, also employee-employer relationship. I know some of y'all are getting a little choked up and like, bro, I might have misclassified. And it's normal. Someday I'll do an episode on why I think that's happening in our industry, why it's done so illegally. And I have a lot of opinions on it. The continuing relationship is another factor. So is the relationship between the independent contractor and the business recurring and frequent? Do they have to show up weekly, right? Do they have to show up regularly? Is the expectation that they're going to be loyal to the business, that they can't go work at the amazing lash studio across the street and at, salon suites down the street? If they can't work anywhere else, or your expectation is that they don't work anywhere else, then they're not an independent contractor. Think about it like a freelance makeup artist. She can go work for Mac. She can go take brides here. She can do a special occasion over here. She can come fill in for you, right? She has independence of where she works because she has her own business and she is taking her clients wherever she deems fit to fill on contracts. If you're not okay with that, then it's not actually an independent contractor that you want in your business. Number 6 is set hours of work. Again, if she has a shift she has to show up to, if she has timelines that she has to be available so that you can schedule clients for her, she's not actually independent. Number 7, if she's full-time. Now, some states, I think full-time is 32 hours a week. I would just, on the safe side, if you're there working more than 32 hours a week, it's kind of assumed that they're full-time or close to it. So again, if there's an expectation of full-time, they actually can't take other clients and other jobs because they're working for you full-time. Number 8, doing work on the employer's premise. If she cannot work anywhere but in your salon, she is not an independent contractor. She is not self-employed. She's required to do the services that you hired her to do at a specific location. Therefore, there is an element of control over her role. Number 9, order of sequence or set, basically your process. If she has to use, if she has to greet your clients a certain way, check them out a certain way, especially using your booking software, and you are taking payments on her clients, right? The application process, if there's an expected result or experience that she is expected to follow, there's an order or a sequence set. Basically, she has to follow processes in order to get to the results. Then she is not independent. Number 10, if she is paid by the hour, by the week, or by the month, right? There is a statement in this part that talks about she's paid by the job. She's likely an independent contractor, but that really does not mean that commission only contractors are good. Like, you can do commission only and they'll be considered a contractor. If they are paid at regular frequencies that you say they're on payroll, or you're writing them consistent and frequent checks without renewing contracts, chances are they're more of an employee rather than an employer. Think about it this way, and I'll plug this in there because I don't even think this is on the list. If you don't have a contract with this person, they're not actually a contractor. You should have contracts for everything. If they're an employee, if they're an independent contractor, you should have legally binding contracts to protect the revenue that is generated, which means that you need an attorney to create the contract. A template offline is not going to hold up in court. Any attorney that looks an employment contract or an independent contractor contract won't have things in there that are illegal. Like, a non-compete does not apply to independent contractors by the nature of a non-compete, which is only for employee-employer relationships. An independent contractor can go work at competing businesses. That's the whole point. They're fulfilling on their business services to other clients, which is the other businesses around the area. So a non-compete just wouldn't even be applicable or legally enforceable for an independent contractor, because it would control the relationship, control how much they could do for their business. And that's not what non-competes are for. Non-solicitation agreements wouldn't hold up for an independent contractor relationship. Non-solicitation agreements are where the employee, should they leave, cannot solicit the business, the clients, the other coworkers to come work for them or come find them wherever they're going. An independent contractor absolutely can solicit clients because they are their clients. They own those clients. So if your business has clients and you don't want them going with the independent contractor, then you actually have an employee that you want, not an independent contractor, because the independent contractor can work wherever she wants, takes her clients wherever she wants to go. So if she decides that she doesn't want to work with you, work in your salon anymore, and she wants to leave, all those clients have every right, and she has every legal right to take those clients with her. Is that what you really want? I'm just saying. Number 11, furnishing of tools and materials. If you provide supplies for her, if you have a certain product line that you want her to use, a certain adhesive that she has to use, the tools that are available there, that she is not free to take her stuff and go and come and go as she pleases, then again, it's likely an employee-employer relationship. Number 12, working for more than one firm at a time. An integral part of an independent or self-employed business owner or contractor is that she can work for anybody and everybody providing her services. So if you don't want her taking the clients that she sees at your shop at another shop, then you actually want an employee, you don't want an independent contractor. Think about it from this sense. If you had a booth renter, right? And that's all she was. All the money you generated from the booth renter is her rent. That's it, right? So you don't care whether she works 5 days a week at somewhere else and only comes in 2 days a week here, if she's paying for a full week. Like, as long as the rent check clears, be my guest. Go do whatever you want to do. All I care about is that your rent comes in. You want to take clients elsewhere, you want to pay rent in 5 different places, be my guest. As long as your rent check clears, that's the extent of my concern as the salon owner who's hired an independent contractor to rent a room. Imagine if your landlord came in and tried to tell you how to run your business when you could and could not see clients, which clients you could and could not see, how to take payment. You'd be like, get the F out of here, buddy. Like, this is my business. I'm running it my way. Same thing. You, as the owner of the salon, having a contractor cannot say boo about how they run their business. And I know some of y'all are like, well, but I don't want them, having certain clients in there. I don't want her playing her music. And I get that, but you don't have any element of control of how they run their business. And so when you're talking about independent contractors and or booth renters, call them the same, I want you to really think about it as you're just their landlord and you're subleasing a space out of your space to help with the rent expense. It is not a scalable business model. The only way that you can make money off of booth renters is if they cover more than your rent and you're like taking a little bit, but it's not a scalable business model. It is a set rate, that they pay their, 500, 1,000, whatever dollars a month as rent. But if their business increases and sees more profitability, your business should not also increase and see more profitability because they are only paying rent. So the realization of profit and loss has to be independent. So if they're seeing more clients and they're more profitable, that should not make your sales go up or down, because then you're not truly independent of each other. You're actually dependent on each other. Making services available to the general public. Again, they can work for, and they talk about general public as like other businesses and other clients. So they can see clients wherever they can do their lash services at other businesses, that they can make their services available to anyone, and that there is no exclusivity or loyalty expected to one particular business. And then lastly, the one that we'll touch on today is the right to terminate and the right to discharge. So when you have a contract in place for an independent contractor, there usually are penalties associated with terminating the contract early. So if you've hired an independent contractor like a booth renter, if they want to break their lease with you or their contract with you early, there's generally some sort of penalty or fee to be able to do that because they have not fulfilled on their contract. Right? How many of y'all with your independent contractors have that language in your contract? Same thing with your lease. Like your landlord, likely, if they've done their job right and their due diligence, have some sort of penalty that you can't get out of your lease early without either paying the remainder of the lease or paying a fine or a fee for early termination. Same thing for right to discharge, in that, or right to terminate, is that if the independent contractor wants to terminate themselves early or stop the contract early, then you as the salon owner could pursue damages or compensation or sue for breach of contract because they did not fulfill on the terms of the contract without some sort of penalty or fee associated with it, right? So again, all of those things, these are kind of the main ones that in our industry, really just people just aren't aware of, ignore, don't take the time to research. So they just label somebody as a 1099 and hope that, they're just going to sit back and collect a lot of money. So I will touch on this. When we're looking at the compensation levels and the pay structure, when you're trying to legally classify somebody, you cannot be comparing the pay structure that you're trying to give an employee to the same as what independent contractor and illegally misclassified businesses do. A 50% commission, which runs rampant in our industry, and even for independent contractors, it's such a blurred line. It's not profitable. I have yet to find, and I've worked with hundreds of salons at this point that have teams, I've yet to find somebody who can profitably pay a team member 50% commission and still be making buku profits. Because that is 50% of wages, 50% of sales, 50% of the sales going to labor, just the labor cost alone, not covering everything else that needs to be covered in the business. And then we also have, if they're legally classified, payroll taxes on top of that. So 50% commission really turns into 58% commission by the time payroll is even run. So now you've got to run your business with 42% of sales or less, which most of y'all aren't even paying attention to the numbers to know what your profit margins are. So all of that to say is, when you want to create a team, when you want to have a business that is no longer trading your time for money, you need a team, a legally and profitable team, legally classified and profitable. Without that context of that is the goal, you will not experience the freedom that can come from having a team and the freedom of having a business that runs independently of you having to do everything in it, especially provide the sales. So while yes, you can cut corners, you can do this illegally and hope you never get audited or flagged in the IRS, or hope nobody ever sues you. You trust people, you think people are good, that's fine. That's fine. You can live under that assumption, and I hope it never does happen. But when we're trying to play a bigger game of creating a life, right? Building your life on a business that can support you financially, do we really want to bank all that financial independence and all that financial growth on the hopes that someone wouldn't get wind of even this podcast episode and go, there might be a money grab here because I'm pretty sure I was misclassified and I want to go sue because I see an opportunity? Do we really want to bank our livelihood on not getting audited, on not having somebody pop up at our door just on a random check on a Tuesday going, well, can you tell me how they're paid? They're 1099s, Let's do some digging. I want you to create a business that is stable, that is growing, and that is structured in a way that's going to actually get you the lifestyle that you want and the life that you want. It is a beautiful thing to have a team. It is a lot of work, and there's a lot of reward, and there's a lot of scalability, meaning that there's a lot of growth that can happen. When you just have booth renters, again, independent contractors, booth renters, we're using those interchangeably, you are capped at how much you can grow because you're capped at how much you can reasonably charge, and you're not really pricing it on profitability because you're just basically covering your rent expense and maybe a little bit more. But you are still tied to providing sales and for your services so that you can provide yourself an income. If you want to stop trading your time for money, you need a team behind you to do that, and a legally classified team and a profitable team. And I can help you do that if you want. You can also read this book and try to figure out how to do that on your own as well. You can look into other places that, or you can test it out, your DIY it, right? So if you want to learn how to hire a team legally and profitably, send me a DM, #hire, and let's talk about your team building goals. If you have independent contractors and or you have compensated your team in a way that you know is probably not producing profit in the business, because there isn't much and you're not able to pay yourself unless you're taking clients and you're like strapped for cash and you're like constantly hemorrhaging money, we have a solution and a fix that can get you out of all of that, right? If you're willing to get uncomfortable. Chances are the team that you built as independent contractors and or with higher commission rates probably won't go with you on the journey to getting more structure in your business and having it be legally sound and financially secure. And that's okay, because we can teach you how to hire people that you can pay in a profitable way and that you can train and have them produce the experience and the results that your business has become known for. So if that's something of curiosity to you, go ahead and DM me #hire on Instagram. Let's chitter chat over there. Otherwise, I hope that this episode was informative and didn't produce too much panic, but I'd rather you be aware of how to protect your business and what laws are really at play here, as opposed to you continuing to walk down this path blindly and risk a lot. And I don't want that for you. I like low risk. I like low risk, big reward, right? All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. If this episode was mind-blowing, eye-opening to you, please share that you're listening to it and tag me on Instagram. I love to hear the feedback from the episodes. If you want to hear more about the legalities of building a team, how to pay a team profitably, hit me up with your questions in the DMs and maybe I'll do a future episode on it. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you. Have a good one.